Hello, welcome to Played by NCG. I am Dan Murphy, editor of National Club Golfer, and I'm joined this morning by my friend, colleague, business partner, publisher, commercial director, professional golfist. Does that about cover it? Tom?
Yeah, that's most of the hats that I wear, yeah.
And looking very smart today, Tom.
I'm just back from Muirfield, Dan, so dressed for the occasion.
Well, that'd be a good place to start, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So congratulations, you're with us at the very start of an exciting new venture, Played by NCG. We write lots about golf courses, as you may well know, and if you follow us on Twitter, at NCG Magazine, then you'll have seen our pictures and our short, pithy reviews of golf courses over the last couple of years, saying where we've been playing and what we thought of it. But we don't often talk about it, or at least we do talk about it, but not really in this kind of format. So we thought, we play lots of golf courses, let's start sharing some of the experiences with you. So at the end of every year, we collate a list and see where we've been. And we're just finishing this year's off, but I think it's going to be a world record. And I think we might just get to the 200 mark. And that's the number of golf courses that our team have visited over the course of 2016, which is quite a large amount of golf. So we thought that we wanted to bring some of this to you, and obviously we're media of the people, so we want to talk to you common man to common man. So we started with somewhere just sort of really normal kind of run of the mill, and Tom's been to Muirfield, which you may have heard of. So we're going to kick off with some Muirfield chat, and Tom is going to tell us about his visit to East Lothian, the first time he's ever been. And Tom, I know you've been looking forward to going for a long time, so
yeah, it's not the first time I've been to East Lothian.
No.
I've been several times previously and played most of the golf courses around Muirfield, but this was my first time on the property, so to speak. And it was good. I've chosen a picture actually, so I've got like some holiday snaps to run through with you. Talking to Dan about golf courses is quite frustrating because he's played practically everywhere. You've got a list, haven't you, of all of the courses you've played?
Yes, I have got, I'm afraid, a spreadsheet. I'm currently somewhere in the high 550s or 560s. Surprisingly difficult to add when you get to this stage, so I'm always on the lookout for a new course, basically.
So any conversation with Dan about golf courses is quite frustrating because he just generally picks holes in anything you've got to say, because he's normally been more than once, and he's normally been to some places that he can compare it to, but we'll give it a go. So I've picked this this picture of, there's a David Cannon shot. It's not my own picture, didn't take a drone with me. I just thought it like properly summed up the sort of amazing setting that Muirfield's in. Quite a lot of people who've been sort of talk about it being sort of underwhelming in terms of the views and the vistas that that you sort of experience, and I didn't find that at all. And this just sort of sums it up for me. You've got the Firth of Forth, I think, in the background. My playing partner was a guy I play a lot of golf with called Charles Concert, and he'd been once before and took great pleasure in telling me on the way there that you couldn't see the sea from anywhere on the golf course. I would say you can see the sea from about 60 or 70% of the golf course, and it's sort of quite a big feature, I think. And the other thing I thought this picture sort of brought to life was that you can see the clubhouse from almost all of the course, which gives you a real sense of the sort of, is it peripatetic, is that the right word? The sort of concentric circles that you play round in. People talk a lot about the routing at Muirfield, that you're never going in the same direction twice, which sort of offers loads in terms of wind direction. And the fact that the golf course is a constant presence sort of really helps you appreciate that, I think. So I thought it was a good shot. Yeah.
Well, he's quite a good photographer, to be fair. Just in case anyone was wondering, there are some letters in some brackets there, which Tom has made an attempt to convey the proper name of Muirfield. Not quite got it right. So that it should say HC small OEG, and that stands for the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers.
Sorry, what have I got wrong? I've got an extra
you wouldn't
T.
really have that T, and the O needs to be a bit smaller, but apart from that, it was fine. Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Hang on, who are the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers? Why don't you enlighten us?
Well, they're a group of golfers who have actually changed their location a couple of times. So they're Edinburgh businessmen and originally they were based at Musselburgh, where the 13 early opens were held, going back to the 1870s, 1880s here, and then eventually that 9-hole course, which still stands today, you can still go and play it.
Play with hickory, can't you?
We play with hickory, yeah. The site wasn't big enough anymore because it's in the middle of a race course, and at that stage they found a new site, which is further out from Edinburgh into East Lothian, just next door to the famous golfing village of Gullen, and that's where they founded Muirfield, and took the Open with them. So the first Muirfield Open was back in the 1890s.
So it's been going a while.
Yeah, a little while, yeah.
And that's Gullen Hill you can see in the background on that picture, which is sort of like amazing views from the top of that. The Gullen golf course is the first couple of holes play up and over that hill, and then the rest of it's sort of in the bay. It's like a beautiful spot. So that whole East Lothian coastline's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of golf up there. So let's just look at the logistics, shall we, to start with. I guess the first thing to say, well, there's a fair amount of kind of normal travelling. The really interesting bit, Tom, is the last couple of miles, because Muirfield doesn't exactly shout its presence to the outside world, does it?
No, not at all. It's like the most sort of discreet sign ever. In fact, I'm not sure there is a sign. If there is a sign, it's very, very hard to spot.
No, only on the property, I think.
Yeah. So you sort of turn off the Gullen High Street and then go down a kind of vaguely made road before you get to some quite imposing iron gates. It's a pretty intimidating arrival. We live in Leeds, which is, well, hopefully you all know, pretty much slap bang in the middle of the country, which is pretty difficult for people who only really recognise links golf as the best format. So we're a long way from the sea, but we are within sort of 2 or 3 hours of basically everywhere. So the drive up to Scotland, or to that part of Scotland, doesn't take long at all. Up the A1 it's 2 or 3 hours, and the last bit of that drive's sort of an experience in itself. Once you get past Newcastle, the A1 sort of tracks the coastline, and those Northumbrian beaches, and that whole drive is sort of worth going in its own right. So that's sort of quite a special part of the trip, actually. And another way you could do it, which would be a fairly romantic sort of thing to do, is get the train. We could get the train from York or Leeds, which follows a very similar path and kind of stops in Durham, stops in Berwick upon Tweed, as opposed to Berwick on the Scottish coastline.
North Berwick.
Yeah, and that again sort of tracks that coastline, drops you off at Edinburgh Waverley, which is like a brilliant spot, and then there's a little local line that takes you out and stops at places like Drem and North Berwick, which sort of
Longniddry.
Yeah, they're proper like evocative places that sort of drop you right in the heartland of that coastline. So life's a journey, isn't it, Dan?
It certainly is. Once you get to Dunbar, it's basically just solid golf. I mean, this is one of the most special stretches of golfing territory you'll find anywhere in the world. So basically the area between Edinburgh coming out to the east, out to Dunbar, is just solid golf, and Muirfield slap bang in the middle of it, and I don't think many people would dispute that it's the single highlight of a pretty amazing coast.
Yeah, and the people there talk about a microclimate. A lot of people talk about microclimates.
They do.
Sort of pretty sceptical, but the east coast of the country is definitely drier, and the way that the golf courses sit there is in like a little bay, so it is reasonably sheltered. And you do have these sort of amazing links experiences where you're watching sort of clouds come in and they sort of part on the coastline, and the storm will either go out to sea or inland, leaving you to sort of enjoy your golf. So I think that's definitely true of that area. So yeah, it's a great spot. So
there's a certain preamble to golf at Muirfield, unlike basically anywhere else you've ever been. So the journey from arriving to actually starting to hit a golf shot is really quite something. Just talk us through your first couple of hours on the property then.
Well, so the sort of experience for me started the night before. There's like millions of different accommodation options around East Lothian, all of which are sort of top class. So you can go and stay at Archfield, or you can go and stay at Renaissance. We've got some lodges now. There's a chap we know called Malcolm Duck, who has a really nice sort of restaurant with rooms in, not in Kilspindy.
No, in Aberlady.
In Aberlady, who we've stayed with before, but I wanted to do it properly. So we stayed at Grey Walls, which is the sort of famous hotel right on the property at Muirfield, and it's sort of an experience in itself. It's a An absolutely ancient coaching house, I think, is how it started life, and it's been in the same family hands for generations. It's now sort of run by a marketing group who have lots and lots of upmarket hotels, and it's incredible. It sort of feels like you're in someone's house. The fixtures and fittings are all sort of very homely. There's like fires on all over the place. There's lots of different areas where you can sort of disappear off and read a newspaper, and there's a very cosy bar, which obviously furnishes you with the local whiskey, or in our case, several gallons of red wine. And it's brilliant. And when I say right on the property, this like little video is a kind of quite intimate shot of the room I stayed in. As you can see, I kept it in good nick. And once you sort of go through the double doors, outside this door is the golf course. So we actually played off the 10th tee, and the 10th tee is just the other side of that wall. And if you've ever attended a Muirfield Open, this is like a very exclusive spot to be in. There's an awful lot of the great and the good around this area. As I remember, the press centre was just off the right hand side here. So it was really weird, having been up there in 2013, that we'd like been straining to watch players tee off that tee, hadn't we? So that was really cool, and that's like a massive part of it. And the other clip on that page is the grey walls is just sort of scattered with montages of famous people who've stayed there, and there's basically nobody in golf who hasn't stayed there, I don't think. Everyone's sort of been and enjoyed it. So they've got memorabilia from all of the visits they've had over the years, particularly around the sort of opens that Muirfield's held, obviously. So it's really cool. It's like a sort of museum piece, and you're massively well looked after, and yeah, it's great, really, really good.
So it's very much travel lodge followed by a muni. That was a kind of experience, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's not. I mean, it's not obviously not cheap as a trip. We'll come on to the cost later, but it is, a special experience, and I think well worth saving up for.
So let me guess, Muirfield's got a normal car park. Oh no, it hasn't.
Yeah, well, our car parking experience was quite odd. So you've just seen where we stayed. We stayed literally within 50 yards of the 10th tee, which we teed off in, and I'd imagine 100 yards from the front door of the golf club. But we left the hotel by the front door, got back in our car, set off to go to the golf club, and then parked our car further away than when we started, which was pretty weird and sort of sums up some of the logistics that take place on this trip. But you can't actually drive your car onto the property of the club. Well, I presume the car park you use is the property of the club, but in a traditional golf club you would arrive and you park by the clubhouse, and you would sort of be there and doing it. But at Muirfield you park some distance away, so you actually park outside of the club gates, and they've got these kind of like low roofed garages, so you park your car inside and then you walk quite a long distance up to the clubhouse gates, which again, it all sort of adds to the kind of mystique of it. Like the area around the club and the first tee and the last green is all very sort of clean. There's no clutter, there's no furniture, there's no cars strewn all over the place, there's no buggies, obviously. And I don't know what you're like, but whenever I visit somewhere special, I'm on edge anyway, and you sort of arrive nervous at Muirfield. I would say that you want to be doing the right thing, you want to be wearing the right clothes. I wore my club tie to show that I was like a proper person, and I even took Charles Concert, who is the poshest man I know, just to make sure I had the right company with me. It's that sort of place, basically.
I'm very pleased to see that there's a nice big basket of teas there. There is nothing that would set a premier venue apart for me than the free availability of lots of wooden teas. Yeah,
well, this is sort of a kind of pet hate of ours, that if you're paying top dollar for a green fee, the last thing you want to be doing is then putting your hand in your pocket for a bag of teas or a yardage book or whatever else it is that you need for your round of golf. My worst experience of this came at Pebble Beach like years ago when I was on my honeymoon, when I'd forked out for my hotel room, which gave me the right to buy a tea time. Then I'd forked out for my tea time, and then I was sort of done and dusted, and I picked up a yardage book, and the guy in the pro shop charged me another $15 for my yardage book, and it just leaves a sour taste, doesn't it? You want to feel that if you paid in advance, that you're done and dusted from a cash point of view, and Muirfield do that really well. So you sort of welcome. They give you discount vouchers for the little shop in Gullen. Another oddity of Muirfield, it doesn't have a pro shop, and instead their sort of branded merchandise is serviced by the local pro down in the town. They give you a yardage book, they give you a scorecard, they give you some pencils, and then it's like the holy grail for any golfer, isn't it? There's free teas. So we all had several dips in the free tea jar. Quite sure we managed to get our money back on teas, but we probably weren't far off. And then the other thing is range balls. I mean, the range is just sensational. it's a massive open field. As you can see, they've got like some brilliant matted areas. You can hit off grass if you want. And that's, again, another thing about the place is sort of once you're on the property, once you pay your money to be there, you genuinely do feel like a member for the day. So the range balls are free, you can hit as many as you want. Tuesdays and Thursdays are visitor days, so they were sort of reasonably busy. When I say reasonably busy, I suspect there were maybe 20 other people on the golf course all day. So there was no pressure for tee times, there was no pressure to get off the range. So the whole sort of preamble was like, it was just as you'd want it, basically. So yeah.
And what about the clubhouse itself and the facilities inside?
Well, yeah, and again, like it just sort of delivers on expectation. I've got this this little video of
another video
of just a sort of panning shot of the clubhouse. But we've been to some places recently where we're at County Down in the summer, weren't we, or in the spring rather, and they've got a very corporate kind of setup there where they've developed a kind of very Americanized experience. So you're in a kind of cafeteria area for your lunch, and the changing facilities are quite modern. Muirfield hasn't done that. It's kind of, there's no visitor element to the locker rooms. You're in the members' changing rooms. They're all oak panelled, as you've seen from that clip. All the members' names are on the locker and little gold-plated things. There's lots of tweed jackets hung up. It's all just so. And I think, you know, if you go into this sort of place, you want to embrace it. And the locker room was brilliant. It was like a step back in time.
But I don't suppose you actually saw any members on the day?
We saw members with guests, but I strongly suspect that on visitor days, members have put a big black line through their diary saying no golf. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that's how they do it. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, visitors' days, and I think the members just stay away. I have once been on the property on a members' day, obviously not playing. And it is a different feel. So it's interesting the way they do it. They kind of just block their course off and just say, yeah, okay, you can have those 2 days, but the rest of the week is ours. So very different atmosphere.
Yeah, it's cool though. It's really good. Yeah.
So, shall we play some golf?
Yeah. So I mean, you're sort of getting a feel for the sort of respect you sort of treat this sort of visit. I mean, our tea time I think was 10 o'clock, and we were having breakfast at 7:30, and we were at the golf club at 8:30. And like I say, we lived 2 minutes away or 30 seconds away, so we did want to get the full experience. And we got there, and we were given the option to play off either the first or 10th tee, which again, credit to them. There was no sort of like you must do this and you must do that. It was like they said, like they're very clear that a couple of groups had just gone off the first tee, and we might enjoy our experience better if we went off the 10th tee. So we took that opportunity. And people will know that it's traditionally a 2-ball only course, which again is a rule they relax on mornings of visitor days where you can play 4-ball golf. So I think a couple of 4-balls just gone off. We were at 2, so we went off the 10th tee and we were around in sort of 3 hours 10 minutes, which is just bonkers, isn't it, for a championship venue.
It's funny how the cultural thing washes over you, that you kind of know that at Muirfield, I mean, they just don't mess about, they play really quickly. And even though you're there on a visitor's day, it's funny how you sort of feel that it's the right thing to do to get a move on with it and skip round.
I think that you kind of, in many ways, you become a method actor, don't you, at these places. If you go to a sort of belfry or a more modern venue, or maybe you've got a buggy, then you sort of settled in for your 4.5 hours in your halfway house, aren't you? At Muirfield, it's not about that at all. We were messing about taking pictures, but we're still sort of bustling about and wanting to do the right thing. So this is I haven't played much golf this year. I've got a young family. This is my attempt at the 10th tee shot, and the 10th is sort of sums up the golf course. I missed the fairway right. It sums up the golf course in many ways. It's a very, very strategic driving hole, so it's not a long hole off the tees. We've played it off. I think it is about 380 or something, 416 rather, off the tees we played it off. So you do have an option to lay back up for some cross bunkers. The real shot is to hit a little trap fade up the left. I sort of hit a block cut up the right, but it was winter, the rough was down, it was fine. So then we're sort of off and running, really.
Were you cross that you had to start on the 10th? Because when you're playing a course for the first time, I always hate starting on the wrong hole, because in your brain it's always slightly the wrong way around.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I think you want to have the proper experience, don't you? It was weird, sort of playing the 18th up to the clubhouse as our 9th. That was odd, and it will make this conversation harder, because obviously I've got a very odd memory of the hole numbers. Yeah.
So let's just talk for a minute about the actual course itself and what you made of it. Now, when you go to somewhere like Muirfield, I mean, it's not just like turning up at somewhere you've never heard of. So obviously the holes are really familiar to you from watching the Open there, walking around, seeing it on TV. What was the reality like compared to your perception?
Yeah, well, you say that. I mean, I've played a lot of golf courses, and I enjoy talking about it. I would say that one of the features of Muirfield actually doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of sort of signature holes. I think there's some golf courses that you go to, and I don't know why I keep referring to the Belfry, but I will. But you're waiting to get to the 10th tee, and you're waiting to get to the 18th tee, and those are the ones you remember. Muirfield is more sort of relentlessly good, and it's just sort of hole after hole after hole where you're thinking, crumbs, this is like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. So
you say crumbs then?
I did say crumbs,
like Nick Faldo does.
Just because I've got my club tie on, so I'm
Sorry, go on.
using the language of the era. Jolly good it is. And yeah, so there's this feeling that you're playing one exceptional hole after another, rather than playing 3 or 4 moderate holes, then a worldie, then 3 or 4 more moderate ones. So yeah, you are familiar with certain parts of the course, but I would say that less so than you would be at other venues actually.
What were the highlights?
Well, it's a driver's golf course, isn't it? And I think that I'm someone who likes to get my driver out off when possible, and Muirfield gives you that opportunity, and there's a huge premium if you can drive the ball long and straight. But the sort of tariff for a mishit drive or a drive that's slightly offline is pretty punishing. So, as you'd expect, it's even off the tees we played it off, which were, a long way forward of the Open tees. It was exceptionally challenging from a strategy point of view, with bunkers often just where you'd want to hit it with your driver, but it does give you that option of laying back. So I would say that I sort of played it in a kind of pretty gung-ho fashion for the first couple, but I got very sick of finding myself in bunkers. I found myself in this very odd-shaped bunker on our third hole, so the 12th. No, 12th's par 3.
13's par 3.
Yeah, on the 12th then. Where I'd hit like a really good sort of well-hit drive up the left-hand side, and it just went slap into the middle of this fairway bunker, and of course I'm chipping out, and then that becomes very difficult. So I think that the strategy off the tee was like a real thing, sort of comparable to Lytham in that respect, I would say.
I had the great fortune to play at Muirfield the day after the Open a couple of years ago off the championship tees, and the thing that took a lot away from that is still really vivid in my mind, as you'd expect. What a privilege that is. What sticks in my mind more than anything though is how difficult the par 3s were that day, playing, because they're not big targets, and when you play them off the championships, suddenly you've got 4-iron, you've got hybrid in your hand, and I just wasn't good enough to get the ball onto the greens, and if I did, to stop them there. Yeah,
I mean, I walked round at that Open, and they had the golf course set up absolutely on the limit, didn't they? I remember very distinctly watching Poulter on the last day, who got like a little bit of a charge going, and he just hit exceptional iron shots, all the par 3s. He's hitting like 5 and 6 irons into proper pan greens that were often sort of elevated. A lot of the greens on the par 3s are in the air, so you've got to flight it, and particularly when it's set up like that, to stop it, you've got to be hitting the ball properly. Obviously wasn't anything like that extreme on the day we played, but I think I hit different clubs into all the par 3s. They all offer different challenges. There's really obvious pin spots on the green. They all look great. So yeah, often you judge a quality of a course by its par 3s, don't you? And Muirfield's like, yeah, jackpot from that perspective. I made 2 at this one. That's why I've chosen that picture, which was the 13th.
Now, I certainly don't want to do your visit down at all, but I would say that 2 of the things that you take away from Muirfield are that the first is one of the great opening holes, and I would say that the last is basically the perfect closing hole.
Yeah.
Now, I know you didn't play them quite in the right order, but can you think of better examples of starting and finishing holes than those 2?
Well, the last, and when I do my write-up, I've got some really good pictures of the last. The sun, we played on one of those weird days when the weather never really gets going, but the sun did come out for maybe 40 minutes in the middle of the day, so we played the first with like a low sun behind the club. The last with a low sun behind the clubhouse, and it's just absolutely sensational. Like, the clubhouse is a beautiful building. and it just sort of sets up, doesn't it? The challenge is very obvious, and I would say that is again a feature of Muirfield. Everything is in front of you. There may be two blind tee shots, and other than that, it's all very straightforward, and that's sort of part of its intimidation. And the last is that personified. It's like if you're having to make 4, then it's very clear what you've got to do. You've got to avoid the bunkers on the left-hand side, and hit a good sort of mid-iron or long iron into the last. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The first. It's a little dogleg to the right, and again, it's a properly challenging driving hole. If you get your drive away, then it is quite a big green. There is an obvious route in, but it's just what you want on the first. There's plenty of room. It's fair, but you've got to hit it properly twice.
I was just about to use that word. When you ask pros, particularly about Muirfield, the word they use is fair. It's really apparent where you're going. I think there's just one blind tee shot on 11. 9 is sort of a bit semi-blind. Not quite clear what's going on, but generally speaking, it's just very apparent what the golf course wants you to do, and for a lot of the pros, that's why they rank it as their favourite open venue.
Yeah, there are a couple of sort of don't want to say weaker, but sort of odder tee shots. So the 11th, like you say, you're just sort of hitting it over a hill, and the hole's not very long. But there's plenty of space either side, which is sort of a requirement of a blind tee shot. But that does sort of stand out as a bit peculiar. There's the hole on the front 9, the 8th, which I think Els says is his favourite hole in the world anywhere. I found that tee shot quite odd visually.
Yeah, the wall.
Yeah, and the yardage to the bunkers on the left doesn't feel like it's long enough, and you think you want to hit it up the left-hand side, but actually the route in's down the right. But I mean, I think that's probably a strength of the hole rather than a weakness. It just takes a bit of getting your head round. And then the second is kind of a sort of hybrid down a hill onto like a funny side hill, which is not very Muirfield either. But other than that, literally everything is straight in front of you, and the challenge is kind of like, if you can do it, then great, but good luck, basically. So yeah.
Now, we all look forward to a visit to the bar at the end of our round, but a little bit different, well, entirely different at Muirfield, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Have we finished on the golf course? I had some other things to say.
Oh, okay.
So I put this picture in of the bunkers because I thought the bunkers were like a real feature. There's some quite quirky ones. You sort of go to links golf courses expecting just relentless pot bunkers, but there are a few at Muirfield that sort of give you a chance. There's a couple that are 60 or 70 yards short of the first green that God knows what I was doing in there, but they're like flat, almost like American style, obviously a new addition. But I did think that was a sort of architectural oddity that you wouldn't expect to find. And the other thing I thought was that other than the par threes, the areas around the green weren't as extreme as some places. So Muirfield for years, I think, has been broadly regarded as one of the tougher open rotor courses. We were at County Down again early this year, weren't we, where all the greens are tabletop and the ball sheds, and we had this thing going where the miss was short. And if you were sort of 3 or 4 yards left of the flag, you were bouncing off into hollows and into deep bunkers. Muirfield, the greens are much flatter around the greens and much less extreme, so you're kind of rolling off into quite friendly, sort of well-kept hollows. So the chipping became actually quite an enjoyable experience. And often there was a way in, so it would be bunkered quite a lot on one side, but there was a very obvious shot shape that would give you an opportunity. So I think the green complexes aren't particularly intimidating.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to booze?
I think so, yeah. I think we've given the course a decent go there. So what about after your round?
Well, the lunch is legendary, isn't it? I mean, you'll know better than me they have a format, don't they? They play 9 holes and then they go and have their lunch and then they go and try and play 9 holes after they've sort of got stuck in.
The members,
yeah.
Well, I think that they just have lunch before they play, and I think that they do their draw for their foursomes.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is that you should spend more time on lunch than on the golf course. So,
Yeah.
so the bigger a lunch, the sort of more golf you're allowed to play.
Yeah, and that I think in the famous letter was part of the reason they were sort of a bit reticent about female members, wasn't it? They wouldn't quite get their head around the lunch arrangements. They'd obviously never met my wife. But the lunch is amazing. So it's in a fabulous room in the main part of the clubhouse. You eat with the members. You're not sort of isolated off. Anyone who's ever eaten at a sort of Surrey Heathland, so a Worplesdon or a West Hill or
Walton Heath's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, all of these places, they do roast dinners properly, don't they?
Swinley's good as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of choices of meat. There's a sort of surf and turf element. I've had about 8 scampies, if you see what I mean. Scampi's a bit like teas, actually, are they? You never have enough, do you? But there you can sort of dip away on the scampi part as much as you like.
Good place for a big plate scam.
Yeah, and again, my playing partner sort of knows his stuff, so we had some decent wine. It's not expensive. I think the food is £30 a head, and it's a proper experience in itself. Yeah, but it's 3 courses, well 4 courses, and you can, it's basically an all-you-can-eat buffet in different words, and everyone has a drink. So the atmosphere is like very convivial. There's the famous Cummel drink, with which there's a shot there. We had 2, which is definitely at least 1 too many.
Horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of aniseedy kind of. You've had one basically. And then we were able to sort of relax again in the members' lounge. So you're not sort of like eshed off into a sort of visitors area. So we spent almost as much time, I would say, at the property having lunch and getting ready as we did playing golf. Probably more so actually. It's a proper sort of day out.
Normally, I like to think of golf courses as beginning on the first tee and ending on the 18th green. And I really try not to pay too much attention to what happens off the course. I think that's really hard to do at Muirfield, isn't it?
Yeah.
As your pictures bring out, there's so much going on, isn't there, off the course?
Yeah, and I agree. Like the sort of pomp and ceremony that goes with most places, you can sort of well do without. Sort of not a fan of concierge bag drops and all this sort of taffel, but at Muirfield it's kind of unfussy, but it feels proper and it feels special, and I think it's to be sort of savoured basically. And again, the sort of memorabilia thing in the clubhouse is absolutely brilliant. They've got a relationship with Merion.
Yeah, Merion lobster pot, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got the famous baskets on the flag sticks, and they've got one of those above the door into the locker room, and that sort of thing is cool. Again, you sort of the worldwide golf community is a sort of small place, isn't it? And people who are members of proper clubs tend to know other members of proper clubs, and sort of be a small part of that for a day is great actually.
So come on then, it ain't cheap, is it? Let's just have a look at how affordable or otherwise your trip was.
It's not cheap, but like I say, I've been once in my life. Hopefully I'll get to go back, but it's a sort of once in a lifetime type of experience. And I think well worth saving up for. It perhaps isn't quite as expensive as you'd think. So Grey Walls is, it's as good as it gets from a sort of accommodation experience. They have it's not Michel Roux, but they have a Roux restaurant. I really ought to know which Roux it is, but they have a Michelin star restaurant anyway.
Roux?
Yeah, a Roux person.
Okay. Move on.
And they're currently advertising on their website a dinner bed and breakfast rate for £184. So your meal's obviously included in that. You don't have to stay there, but that is available to you. And the winter rate at Muirfield is £115 for 1 round only. The rate in the summer months is double that, but you can play twice. I think, or you can play 9 holes certainly. And then the lunch, which if you're going to go, you have to have the lunch. It's £30 per head. So you're talking about a sort of £350 trip. But like I say, if it's a 50th birthday, or if it's a golf club anniversary, or it's your captain's year, there's not many better places I would say you can go and you remember it forever basically.
Yeah, I think if you were going to spend that kind of money on an overnight golf trip, then this would be a pretty good place to start, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it was one day only because I had to get home and see this chap, which isn't supposed to be my presentation, but I accidentally got left in.
So before we call that a wrap for episode 1, and I think there's been plenty to chew on there, hasn't there? I was just going to toss a little hand grenade into the conversation. So although you are a very busy man and a father of 2 lovely boys, you have also managed to play a little bit of golf this year, haven't you, in some fairly stellar locations. So given that it's towards the end of the year, could you give us a 1, 2, 3 of the best courses, or your favourite courses, you can butter it any way you want really, that you've played in the calendar year?
Yeah, so I've had 2 children. That's my eldest, Josie. So it's been an odd year for golf for me. So I haven't played in anything like as much as I normally do. So I've chosen my golf quite carefully. So we've played some brilliant places. So in the spring we were in Northern Ireland, and the sort of trophy course of that trip was County Down. We took our families to Skibo and played the links there, which is pretty exceptional. I played English Amateur at Ganton. I've been to Muirfield. We went over and played Old Head. It's like been a proper bucket list year, hasn't it?
That's why I've asked the question, really.
Yeah. So I'm saying that Skibo is my favourite course still. I think that the whole thing about there is just, yeah, I think it's otherworldly. So if we sort of talk about the sort of off-course experience at Muirfield, which is very much kind of it's old money and it's kind of the way that golf has been done for years. Skibo's like not untraditional, but it's up again in terms of service levels, and the golf course is just bonkers. So yeah, Skibo I think sort of stands out for me. Old Head was obviously amazing, like the views were ridiculous. Doombeg's pretty cool. I think County Down would be number 2. I think again it's kind of one of these places that you really have to go and try it, because the golf course is totally unique. Like the views and the conditioning of it, and the mountains of Moor in the background, and this sort of oddity of the greens that shed for the first sort of 14 holes just make it something special. And then third would definitely be Muirfield. Like that was a proper couple of days, and yeah, the golf course was. I mean, it's in such good condition. We played it in the middle of November, and we you walk off with dry feet, ball's still bouncing, and you can see why. Like just on a golf basis, if you could choose to be a member of a type of club, then why would you not want to be a member there? You play golf all year round, you've got a place to yourself. Like, it was brilliant. So there you go, Skibo, County Down, Muirfield. Can't believe I'm saying the words, to be frank.
No, quite a punchy top 3, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's gone quite well, Tom. Thank you very much for an enjoyable discussion.
Do you know what? Talking about playing my own golf is about as good as it gets for me, so it was a pleasure.
So we'll come back next time. I think we'll have a different guest. Might give a different flavour to discussion. But thanks for watching, and hope to see you soon.
Bye.